You are listening to River West Radio on WXRWLP 104.1 FM Milwaukee. Support for this program comes from Collectivo Coffee, dedicated to keeping Milwaukee's bike riding community rolling with bike pumps available for use in all Collectivo cafes. More info is available in cafes and at collectivocoffee.com. This is Cinema Fireside. Thank you for listening. If you're listening live, it is just the epitome of an autumn evening in Milwaukee. People are out, the colors are turning, leaves are beginning to rattle along the cement. The Milwaukee Film Fest is happening, and just want to, I'm glad I keep a journal, because otherwise it'd all be just an unfathomable blur. Gabe Van Handel, thanks for calling in. You are a cornerstone to this production. You're a learned man, as we often cite. You've got the facts down, the data at hand, and your extemporaneous articulation is immaculate. We thank you for that. These 10 minutes will roll by like no one's business, Gabe. So keep the faith. Listeners, we hope you're well. We hope you're eating right, sleeping right. That's key. That's important. If you're doing a lot of activity, you've got to take rest. You have to take breaks because, something could happen from within, come on up, and it's like, oh, man. So it's real important. The nature doesn't care about martyrs. It just doesn't. So you got to look out for yourself. You gotta get that rest, no matter what city, place. I mean, you could be in Milwaukee, you could be in Austin, you could be in New York, who knows, man. But if you're working very hard and engaging in just continuous rigorous activities, you have to rest. No one loves a martyr, man, especially when you're flat on your back and no longer can do anything about it. So now is the time. Milwaukee Film Fest is happening, Strad style. My man got a hold of me. He lives in Ohio, lives in the middle of nowhere. Makes master violins, and gave one to a master violinist. And that's what that documentary covers. We were at the opening night party. I heard my name. It was my man, Dan from Ohio. Actually, the Packard game was on that night. The situation was this. I looked at the Film Fest schedule, opening night party, which is always a big one on the 28th. I said, my word. That's the night of the Packers. Well, how people say, well, you're just going to have to tape it. I says, well, that's not going to happen. I'm not missing the Packers. No way. So a couple days prior to that, I started calling the facility, the establishment, the bar. Said, hey, man, looking for answers, got answering machines instead of answers. And those people were good. They called me back. They texted me back. They called me back. We had a conversation, man, and said, no, we got the Packers on the TV. Sure enough, the Film Fest started. It was crazy because, there's parties in all these rooms in the tent and that, but right in the middle right there is a kind of like a little separate room. It's open, so you're part of everything. And sure enough, Packers, Chicago at Lambeau Field, we're 3-1. And just sat there. And the great thing about that is, instead of, getting into all of these asinine conversations, trying to talk over music, which will not be done, if there's such an urgent matter that needs to be discussed, you could sit there while the game is rolling. And that's how it went till the end. And, you had a desk there so you could work on your script, your journal, all of that stuff. And like I said, if there were people felt there were pressing matters that needed to be discussed, we had a table for them to sit down and discuss those matters. That's how I hooked up with the dude from Strad Style. He sat there with me, said, hey, come to the screening. I said, okay, it's as long as it's a godly hour. We're in the city. Sometimes parking can be wild, but parking, we've been very fortunate with our parking situation. So check that film out at the beautiful Avalon Theater. Then Saturday, I saw on 35 millimeter, nothing to do with the Film Fest, at the UWM Union Cinema, Michelle and Romy's high school reunion, I believe. Man, that was a trip. That's a gem of an artifact that's from the late '90s. Takes place also in somewhere in the '80s. Good use of music from that time. One of the chicks from Friends or so was on it, Lisa Kudrow or something. And I don't know, it was just a trip, man, just sitting there and watching that on 35. So we get out of the theater, and the real McCoy is there, and he says to us, he says, "Hey, Stephen King's going to be at the bookstore." I says, "Well, Stephen King ain't going to be at the bookstore. That's crazy. But what he is going to be, he's going to be at one of the larger venues." And my man Tom says, "Wait, what? I forgot all about that." He said, "I think I ordered tickets for that half a year ago, but no one confirmed it." So dude goes off, makes his call. He says, "Hey, man, I got 3 tickets to Stephen King tonight. You want to go? You get a free book, too, from him and his son." We said, "Yeah." So we all took our vehicles downtown, had to find diverse parking spaces. I lucked out, got something just south of Wisconsin Avenue, and we all met up. And yeah, that was cool. And we were smart enough to get water, bottles of water. We were way up there. There's 2,500 people. It was packed. Stephen King, Owen King discussed their new collaboration, and it was short and sweet, about an hour. And what's funny about that is listening to Larry David on Fresh Air. It's the same thing that I do, Stephen King does, is Larry David. Here, let me jump to the Stephen King. So at the end, they have this Q&A, and this one guy, and you could tell he was genuine in his voice. It was very sentimental, very heartwarming about having this very first edition of Carrie, and this is very melodramatically being played out in silence in front of 2,500 people. "Would you, Mr. King, please sign this book for me?" And with a little bit of a prefatory angle, he said, "No." Silence. I thought it was just so great, because the amount of things that guy gets asked, and I thought, he's probably genuine, but the dude has a first edition, and if King signs it, that will heighten the commercial value of that book considerably. And King could have just made that guy thousands of more dollars on that first edition just by signing it. So you don't really know what's going on. And he says, "Well, if I sign your book, I'm going to have to sign everyone else's book too, So that was stunning, but I appreciated it. And it's just like Larry David, who was on with Terry Gross, and he said, "Man, when I learned to say no, my whole life opened up. I wished I would have learned that earlier." Now, I'm paraphrasing him. I don't know exactly what he said, but it was along those lines. Because, man, I'm telling you, you got to say, no. Depends what position you are and under what circumstances you find yourself in life. But I'd be saying no almost each and every day. Because believe you me, it has zero to do with the rent. It has zero to do with the creative work, anything like that. It's all of these distractions, all of these digressions. And before you know it, you're going to be in your coffin looking up and simply going to say, "Damn, why didn't I say no?" So, yeah, no. When you say no to others, you say yes to your life. And, yeah, there's socio-political stuff. You got to bend and not break, all of that kind of stuff. So when we talk about the films at the Film Fest, so it was a great night with Stephen King. Got the book, the strategy, and the book is Sleeping Beauties, and the strategy is this. It is that when I got home, I read the very first part of the very first chapter, because if I didn't, I knew I would probably never get to it. So then, because I can only digest Stephen King 2 pages at a time for his novels, and they're not really I'm getting into the book, but it's just contextually 10 years from now, I'm going to be able to say I read the Stephen King book. So I figure to read Sleeping Beauties, it will take, I don't know, maybe 5 to 6 years, because I've been reading that sequel to The Shining. I think it's Mr. Something or Dr. Sleep, maybe. It's we've already gone into years, and I think I'm maybe even a fifth of the way through. So I figure Dr. Sleep may take 10 to 15 years to read. Because those his novels are a slog, man. I mean, when you're reading stuff like Rachel Cusk and John Cheever, and where things just roll, that's one thing. And Stephen King can take the hit from this show because he's got hundreds of millions of dollars, and this is not going to hurt his feelings. He's a good writer. He's a populist writer. And I do enjoy his short stories. I did enjoy On Writing, and I am enjoying Danse Macabre. I like his nonfiction and his short stories. That I can deal with. And also reading The Color Out of Space by H.P. Lovecraft for the Halloween season. And I saw today an adult film, Pendular. And when you see stuff like that, it's like a Fajardi film or a Kiarostami film, Abbas Kiarostami. These are adult films with an adult sense of time. Their temporal quality is luxurious, something that populist film cannot afford, because a populist film is made for the lowest common denominator. People who fell on their head, and it's like, man, I can only pay attention for 3 seconds here. It's the typical It's the typical any film that's at a populist marquee. They have a template of music, silence, bombacity, contemplation. It's each film. You can't tell the one from the next, and whether it's whatever it is. Believe you me. So when you see Pendular or something along those lines, and Aquarius will be next. Those are adult films with adult philosophies and adult renderings of thought. So they are it's like a breath of fresh air, and it's like everything else you've just seen is like moronic trash. So I'm not saying it's a great film by any means, but it's an adult film. So just like Aquarius, I had seen the previous film by the director that takes place in a South American apartment complex, because when people ask me, say, what films are you going to see? I say, not the films you are. My films are about women, theater, and symmetry. You will not be sitting next to me. Sure enough, Pendular, no one was of that ilk. The people that got into it were there. Same with Aquarius. Same with the other 5 films on my list. You will not be there. Some of you will, obviously, but few and far between, because everyone's different. Thing about it is, and Gabe, I haven't forgot about you. We're about ready to roll. Only reason why I say things like that is because you waste so much energy with people having to qualify your identity that when you do say acerbic things like this, and it may get into the mind and say, well, maybe I don't want to waste someone's time because they're really not who I think they are. And that's why these things are spoken. So the other, we can all get our lives back. We're all different. Gabe, that said, welcome to your life.
Welcome. Hey, Mark.
Gabe, how you doing, my man?
Excellent. Good to be on the show.
Great to have you, my man.
Good to have another Monday roll around. Ow.
Hey, you need a Band-Aid?
No, I'm walking around 2 cats, and one of them's a kitten, and really playful, and it doesn't realize how
dude,
getting bigger by the day. And
you're absolutely right, Gabe, and everyone's different. My philosophy is no pets, no plants, no people. It works like a charm, dude. Not for everyone. For everyone.
Definitely not for anyone, for a lot of other people.
Thank you.
That's hence why it's not universal.
Thank you.
A lot of people have the universal philosophy that whatever works for them must be what works for everyone. And I witnessed this in just stunning mold display this week. So, and I just had to very, very pointedly and very specifically keep my mouth shut, which was the best thing that I could have done. Because there are all these alternate realities that I'll see alternate things happening, like this loud crystalline film opening up out of a cocoon in my mind's eye. Whenever there's this possibility, there's two versions of it. There's either the let's not do this because there's this other pointless, strifey film where I insult people for no reason, or there's this other version where I avoid something breaks, like where something doesn't break, an object that had I not been paying attention to what I'm doing, there's this alternate film where in some other version of what just happened that is happening, this said object breaks, which doesn't cause a real major reaction. It doesn't really have some...
You didn't break a vase, did you?
No. I'm talking about minor objects in my day-to-day life. Or like I take a right turn instead of a left on a road. I take this road instead of another road. And every decision that you make, especially the ones that you think you don't think about, going on your route to work, your usual route to work from home, your usual route to the gas station, your usual route to the library. These are not usual things. They only appear usual. And every second, you are still alive. You have the ability to make choices, have discussions, live your life fully. There is no boredom. There is no monotony of life. And yes, like what Sartre said about hell is other people, there are some weeks where, man, there are some years where I agree with what you say in your monologue most of the time, because it's very true. And sometimes when you're discussing this stuff about not getting caught up in the films, like these small sort of like soap, it's like the difference between like watching like soap operas, like literally like daytime television, versus watching like a good film. And choosing the people you want to spend time with, the conversations you want to have, the content. Do you want to go to do you want to go hang out at McDonald's, or do you want to, if you have extra tickets to the ballet? Some people wouldn't be able to stand the ballet. Some very intelligent people would have zero interest at the ballet because they're mathematic minded. They have no interest in fine arts. And that's not to say that those people don't have value, don't have worth, and don't have great lives, but they're just increasingly not the lives that I want to share, and not the lives that I necessarily want to be, that I need to hear the inklings, the tickings, and the machinations of. So there's certain periods where, man, the machinations of a lot of ordinary lives have so many cogs and functions and possibilities, and every decision that everyone makes, especially the seemingly unconscious ones, have all this weight that keep like the illusion of reality afloat, keeps it functioning in this sort of seemingly ordinary way. And I try and fill it up with as much extraordinary stuff as possible. And the easiest way to do that is to, at the same time, stay conscious of what you're doing and when you're doing it, to be present and to be mindful and to care about other people, but also do as many new things as possible. Break out of the bubble often. Go into uncomfortable situations. Talk to people. Talk to strangers. Smart strangers. That's the key there. In settings where you're likely to run into intelligent people in an intelligent situation. Break out of a mold, especially if it makes you really uncomfortable. Man, I have met so many rando people in Kansas City by just breaking out of the mold of familiarity, of comfort, of this is what I want to do, and this is where I want to do it, and this is how I always do it. Well, there's not too many interesting stories to run into when I do it the same way. And in fact, I'll find pointless reasons to get resentful pretty quick when I have a circular loop of people, because a lot of it is just that I'm resentful at myself. So, I've been going to, I met a group of younger, sort of like post-college age friends that I'm starting to get to know in the city that really remind me a lot of River West Milwaukee, a sort of like basement arts, really intelligent, sort of do-it-yourself. Don't rely on anyone. Do things to the best of your absolute ability. Use your brain as much as possible. Involve as many people. Help as many people as possible. Make others' voices heard. Like if you're outraged about something, shout it. Be open to discussion. It's really cool to finally feel like I have my feet on the ground in the city. And the similarities between Kansas City and Milwaukee in its film community, in its fine arts community, in its food community, in its restaurant scene and all this other stuff. It's really cool. It really has a lot of culture that's very similar to Milwaukee. The big difference being that there's more academic support for a lot of the stuff, and there's more money available to it, and there's more average, like the average person, the average middle class person has more, I think, awareness and has more involvement in the fine arts in Kansas City than the average middle class or lower middle class person in Milwaukee does. Part of that is that it's a smaller community, it's a more tight-knit city, but also is that there's more outreach, there's more education about it, and like I said, there's more academic involvement in the arts, in music history, in the jazz program here, in the film program here, the fine arts programs in various colleges. So it's super cool that's, by going out and exploring and not just getting stuck into a rhythm and not getting crammed into this sort of sequence of seemingly soap opera-like events of like, oh man, we're watching Days of Gades live here. And, it's like it's a different story every day, but it's basically the same show. And I just said, no, I am not doing this. I am not going to be on a soap opera. I'm not going to have basically the same thing happen every day. I'm going to go out there, and I'll tell you, man, Kansas City is pretty cool. And we got some really cool theaters here, but, man, there's just nothing, Milwaukee still feels like the place where it all happened and where it's all still going to happen. So it's a strange it's a strange thing to not live in Milwaukee still. It's been 8 months, but.
Well, we need you back, Gabe, but you have to bide your time.
Exactly.
And I just want to, because I want to, just on a note too, on September 3rd, we had soul singer Charles Bradley pass away, and so I mean, just a great man, and I know and just wanted to honor his life, and and that's another reason why you want to live well, and as he did. So we obviously honor Charles Bradley, who passed away on the 23rd of September. So I just I definitely wanted to get that in there, Gabe, and then obviously back to you.
Well, Mark, I'm more interested in the Milwaukee Film Festival because, I don't get to take part in it this year. I don't get to be around it. There's no movies I get to go to. Last year, you and I just had I just have nothing but really fond memories of going to All the President's Men with Sam Bracey, and, you spoke before the film, and, All the President's Men. We've talked about this film numerous times on the show. And,
I'm glad you brought that up. I would have forgot. I mean, it's in my journal. So me, you, and Sam went?
Well, you were speaking before the film. You were asked to speak before the film started. And I went with Sam, and we watched this nice 35 millimeter print of, I think it was the only film that was shown on film during the whole festival. And, slightly worn in. It was the beginnings and the ends of the print were sort of weary. it had this sort of rugged look to parts of it. Parts of it were a little rough. But man, I've seen that movie probably 4 or 5 times, and it's still one of the great American films of all time. But yeah, Mark, your anecdotes about the festival are uniquely Borchardian in that you do things your way.
Dude, when you bring that up, I just wanted to mention that one of my films, The Dundee Project, was playing last night, I think it was last night, if I'm remembering correctly, and it was at what day is today? Monday, so it was Sunday night. So it's at 9:30 at night. That means I'm going to miss the radio dramas essentially. So, but it was at the main theater at the Oriental, the big theater or big auditorium. So then somebody clued me in and said, "Hey, man, you should ask when you do your Q&A, is it going to be after your film and then the other film comes on?" Because I was thinking it was going to be after both films. So I asked them. I says, "Hey, anyway?" They tell me, "Hey, you know what? You're going to do your Q&A right after your film. Then we'll play the other film, Love and Saucers." I said, "Great, man." Because as soon as I'm done with my Q&A, I'm splitting. Then this is what happened. The filmmakers of Love and Saucers are basically right behind me or in the area. They say, "Dude," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I told them straight out what my plot was going to be, and I said, "Well, you let them know that they had foiled my plot," but then I was more than happy to sit there and watch their film, which was delightful, Love and Saucers, and listen to their Q&A and so on and so forth. But had those filmmakers not been in my physical vicinity and approached me, I would have been out of there so quick it would have made your head spin. Man, but it's they made a great film, and I was happy to see it. And sure enough, man, I woke up the next morning like, damn, man, I need sleep because I got to get up at the same time, and you get to sleep after midnight with those screenings. So the plot was foiled, but it was for a good cause. So in Love and Saucers was great, and so were the filmmakers.
This is all really good to hear, man. I love the involvement of the city. The Milwaukee Film Fest is growing in reputation every year. More and more people from all over the state of Wisconsin, flock to different films. In the anticipation for certain films, people pick up the booklet and they sort of decide what movies they want to see and what they're going to look forward to in these movies long before they actually see them. And then a lot of people watch these sort of more fringe, more independent films that to some of the people that go to the festival, this is just their usual, this is just their usual diet. And some other people that come there, they don't really watch independent cinema a whole lot, or just don't watch a whole lot of movies. But in the name of community spirit, they get excited for this because it's a cultural event. It's a community event. It's not just about watching a movie. It's not just about enjoying the film. There's this bigger sense to it. So that's always really cool when movies have have other purposes and other meanings besides just a movie that plays on the screen that has value to the single recipient of the audience. When it has these other attributes and these other values, that's just great stuff. Not necessary, it's not required, and it doesn't always happen. So when it does happen, my thumbs are always wide, big up. Even if the film is repugnant, has no value, I'm always about people coming together for a shared cause. Transformers even has that. I remember when the first Transformers film came out, people were so excited because this hallmark of their childhood was coming to the screen, and Michael Bay, who is Michael Bay. I mean, you say what you want about him. I've said my piece about him on the show many times, but he's made some very entertaining films that serve a very, Mark, as you said, populist purpose. Transformers the first Transformers film was actually extremely entertaining. It was just this fun, broad, very, very lowest common denominator, but very well made in its action scenes. And they had these long action sequences. and it kept the spirit of the kept the spirit of the cartoon show. It kept the spirit of the toys. It kept the spirit of everything that was important about Transformers for the kids of that generation of the 80s and of the 90s, too, that watched reruns of it. G.I. Joe was much the same way. When that film came out, people were... it brought back a resurgence of semi-fans, of sort of occasional fans, of kind of fans, and it brought back that larger sense of community, though many years had passed. Which was cool to see Joe fans unite again, Transformer fans, the sort of calling back this nostalgia of childhood, which usually it winds up just sort of being a robbing of that, because whenever you have a remake or a recycling of something that is very important to a large group of people, by and large what you have is just, especially because of the social media and the fact that everyone has this ability to communicate with everyone in the most inconsequential and immediate way, or the most important, engaging, and thoughtful way, depending on what your what your take on it or what your context of it is. There's just so many voices and so much context over this detail and that detail, or this feeling or that feeling. So Blade Runner coming out this Friday is definitely another extension at It, which you and I talked about on the show last week, is a remake that was very warmly received, adaptation and sort of remake, that was very warmly received across the board by fans of the novel, fans of the film, horror fans. So that's, it's pretty cool to see this occasional films that are remakes or sequels fall into this other territory where it really, not only was it okay, it wasn't that bad, or it was pretty good, to wow, it was actually really good, or even the territory of I'm stunned, I can't believe how good it is, which is the reactions that are coming out of Blade Runner 2049, which I'm more than happy to hear about. Ridley Scott handing over directorial duties to Denis Villeneuve was a very smart move on his hands, and he's also going to be directing the next remake of Dune, which is another smart move because it means money. These films are he's been critically well received and universally on all of his films, especially his small, thoughtful, more independent leaning films, his more obtuse films, and his transition into Hollywood has been just very well received. He's transitioned very well. He's found a market for himself. He's found a niche, and people like his films, and he's made a name for himself where people will go see his movies just because of the fact that he's directing them, and go see it because of the franchise that he's also being attached to. So this is really smart Hollywood filmmaking, where they actually are going for talent, where they're actually going for creativity, where they're actually going for ideas and good filmmaking, and someone who wants to take risks, which is just super cool to see, because it still happens, but it's less recurring, because whenever you get into franchise or guaranteed profit return of Hollywood, the quotient of risk just go way down. It's just it just is so much less recurring. So to see movies like the latest Alien film, which was just hilariously entertaining, and was also like this weird lingual work of art as well that was so playful. I'm hoping that the same thing is true for Blade Runner 2049, which has been almost across the board been getting very, very rapturous reviews. So that's going to be super cool. Yeah, I'm just super happy about all that stuff. So it's hopefully going to be a nice late autumn season for awards films, as it usually is. There's this mix usually of studio prestige films, where films that vie for the Best Picture Oscar and other awards, And then there's films that come out from smaller studios that vie for best actor, best actress, some vie for the major, for, best director, best picture and stuff like that. But a lot of them just want a piece of the pie. So you just have a higher standard of Hollywood and mid-Hollywood and sub-Hollywood films that come out around this time into the early and late award season. So the big guns are starting to come out, and as Mark always points out in October, the season of the witch is upon us.
That's highly correct. And where I live, across from the library, they got this great pumpkin park, which is one of the coolest things, where the park is filled with rows of pumpkins and all the people, and they'll have a folk band or whatever, and it's really mega cool. So yeah, where I live, man, they decorate places and all of that stuff. It's really haunting. So yeah, dude. So I've got I've seen about 4 horror films so far for the season, reading H.P. Lovecraft, Stephen King, and actually kicking in A Lonely Place too, kind of a autumnal noir thing. And so I've got hopefully many more horror films to get in, and also on. So yeah, we'll see, my man. Mm-hmm. I've got more lined up.
Yeah, October's a good month to devote the whole month to horror films and fright films and horror stuff like Clive Barker, H.P. Lovecraft, and to catch up on stuff that otherwise I think would for non-horror super nerds, super geeks, it can sometimes get left to the side a little bit, as it when it isn't a concurrent obsession anymore, when one gets a little bit older, or one just kind of grows with different interests. Horror films just don't take up as much time, I find, as they used to. But man, it's still good to see some great, the real master strokes of horror cinema. I actually saw a really strange French film the other day that I've been reading about for over a year, called Nocturama, which is directed by a guy named Bonello. That's his last name. I want to say his name is Bertrand Bonello. And there's echoes of other horror films within the film. There's almost, I don't know if they're overt homages or if they're if I was just interpreting it like that. But there is definitely this string of brilliance in his work that was coming out in different ways throughout the film. Different tones, different attributes. I felt like I was watching all these different films with all these different tones and tonalities, but man, the final product is just stunning. So I read about this in the New York Times a few months ago, and had read about it at the Cannes Film Festival last year, and it's about a group of French sort of young, college-age, proto-anarchist, sort of political science, philosophy students who are sort of tired of the contemporary society and all these sort of hypocrisies of their families, of their workplaces, of their colleges, their institutions, and whatnot. And they, without going too much into exposition, become a domestic terrorist cell, and execute a number of anarchist sort of street violence, street warfare acts. And then, because one of them is a security guard in a shopping complex, like a Metropolitan IKEA type place, plan on hiding out in a shopping complex nearby all these other bombs and explosives that they've set off, and then hiding in there while the city is on lockdown, and then escaping afterwards when the city is released, and then not getting caught. So during the period, so in the beginning of the film, the first half, you see these minor expository sequences, and then you see them exit like this tense but very sort of uncertain buildup leading towards something, and then the actions are executed in this sort of detached way, just shot and edited so dissimilar from how they would have been shot in the average American action film. And then there's this, and then the second half of the film is them sitting and lounging around in this 5-story, very contemporary shopping and living complex, where essentially they are surrounded by clothing, home stereos, all the attributes of a modern, comfortable, idyllic life. And these are supposed anarchists and supposed revolutionaries, but they're children. And so they spend the rest of the film basically playing with all these tools and all these toys. So there's all this sort of and none of the contradictions of their characters are ever really talked about because they're biding time. So it's a very fun film. It's a very playful movie. It's full of just these layers of metaphors upon visual metaphors. Some of them overt, some of them, I think, a little more discreet. And I think it's a little less pretentious than I'm making it sound. It's not really a film that's obsessed and suffused with all this angry, all these angry contradictions. It's really a film that's more humorous than that. And I was just every minute of the film is just loaded with content, subtle content. Mark, as you were discussing earlier, with
yes, sir.
When you were discussing this, films made for adults, by adults, about adults. Now, it maybe this film is not necessarily about adults, but most certainly it's for adults and made by adults. The score to the film, which is all like this sort of haunting, extreme, sort of neo-70s Italian synth. There's almost overt, but I couldn't be certain, homages to Suspiria in various forms. And, of course, most obviously, The Dawn of the Dead, 1978. So there's a lot to love there. Nocturama, highly, highly recommended adult cinema.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Really good stuff.
And what's great about the film festival is there are a lot of adult films in it, and actually that's one of its many virtues, is that this is a time to see those up on the big screen and to peruse the guide and get familiar with these films that you're.
Hey, I'm just trying.
Hey, I hope you got that situation under control. You don't get an eye scratched out, Gabe. Those things can happen. Yeah, you take care of that, my man. And so yeah, that's the thing that I enjoy about the film festival. It's that ability to work on your scripts while watching a film. You got the legal pad with you, and you're being inspired because, again, these films don't require that put your mind into a frenzied tailspin. Again, with the bombacity of its frenzied temporal realm. Bam, bam, bam. None of that stuff. I mean, because that just fries the mind, man. So. It's great, at the film fest, that it's not just the films, but it's the leaves rattling across the sidewalk. It's the dreams that you indulge in. It's the people that you meet. It's all of that stuff. So it's its own magic kingdom for a week and a half.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said about the outer language of the cinema scene. The movie theater that one chooses to see a movie in, the people, should you decide that you like to, I don't personally like to watch movies with other people as much as I prefer to watch them alone.
Thank you, Gabe.
Whether in the comfort of my own home or in cinemas, I do perfectly well with or without people. I love having people in my life. It would be meaningless without them. But man, when it's movie time, being able to just dive right in to really take detailed mental notes or literal physical notes, to pay attention to the cinema that's on the screen. Because usually, even no matter how much I enjoy my company, and I've had many forms of company over the years, I never have company that's as enthused and infused with cinema as I am. And it's not to say that they're lesser or that they're just, a lot of people have interests that have, they have their interests and I have mine, and I know what mine are. Mine are usually, almost always, radically pointed right at films, film culture, books about cinema, articles about cinema, things about cinema, discussing cinema, the changing tide of cinema. That stuff is what really just excites my mind, among many other topics. But man, that's the one where I'm really on fire. I don't want to miss anything. I don't want to miss a detail because because I don't want to, because I feel like you're missing something very potent and very alive. The full context of what a film can mean in its totality, the full context of what a director's work can mean, down to the most minuscule detail to the most maximal umbrella-like enclosure of a director's work or a screenwriter's work. The smallest moment in a film or the biggest moment in a film. If you're not paying attention to the movie, if you're whittling around with some other stuff, playing on your phone, working with some other stuff, you're going to miss stuff. Now, however, it's not to say that, like you said, Mark, like working on your own script, working on your own material while a film is going on can't happen. There are times when there'll be certain films when I become acutely aware, if I drop out for a few seconds here and there, I'm not going to miss the end of the. It's not the end of the world. But there's stuff that just resolutely and acutely demands your attention. Grown-up cinema for grown-ups. Yes. And, man, having other people around, Mark, that's one thing that you and I have always agreed on. And will always agree on, I think. With the exception of your company and maybe one other person, there are very few people I've ever met in my life who I really, truly, completely feel like when we watch a movie in each other's company, like we're both right on that same page of, no, this is what we're doing right now. This is like completely what we're doing right now. So for people out there that are really into movies or really into something, whether it's music, literature, fine art, ballet, or just whatever your respective passion is, if you can find a friend or another person, or much less a partner, who can appreciate your appreciation for it, or can appreciate it as much, if not more, that is such a special, wonderful, potent, powerful thing to have, and don't take it for granted, because it's not always there, and it's not always going to be there if you let it go. I think in your youth, when you're surrounded by like-minded people, or when people seemingly have, you find these circles and pockets of friends that all seemingly have the same interests at the same time in the same way, before, children, before you get married, before you find careers, before you move away, before you graduate college, before you grow up, essentially, in a lot of ways, or just sometimes grow out, or lose that passion to some degree. There's so many multitudes of reasons, but when you're young, having people that have like-minded interests, it's you can take it for granted. So when you can find that sort of enthusiasm and passion and vitality when you get older, don't take that for granted, please. That is such a special thing to have.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And speaking of, I think I'm definitely another film of high interest is going to be Chavella, and I know that there's going to be a lot of very invigorating music in that and so forth. So I just want to throw that out there. I think that Chavella is going to be a film of quality and great music selection, undoubtedly. So yeah, Gabe, and we do miss you because this film fest needs you, my man.
Mark, are there any other films that you have picked out for the festival that you're really looking forward to?
Yeah. One's called Rock and Roll, and it's about artists. And I'm sorry to be very brief about that because I don't have the guide in front of me. There was about like 7 of them, and they all in like Aquarius is about a woman in an apartment building where they're attempting to give her the boot, and she is not down with that ideology. But the point of it is his previous film too took place in an apartment complex, and I love that because I've always gotten into apartment
That's
complexes.
a South American guy?
Yes.
Mark, that's the filmmaker whose movies you and I met discussing.
Really?
Whatever his name is, you and I were in River West Film and Video, and Zav had just ordered that Criterion box set of some of his films. There were 3 films in that set.
Wait, it was Neighboring Sounds. I can't believe my memory actually came up with that.
There's something like Alicia's Voice or something like that. There's 3 titles. There's like Neighboring Sounds, Alicia's Blanket or something like that, and then there's one other one. And you were standing near the front looking at it, and I had just gotten done watching. I'd seen one of the 3 films, which mainly consisted of the characters smoking heroin together, and then cutting away to these documentary scenes of the building literally being torn apart, and then going back to these semi-dramatized sequences of non-actors.
No, we're talking about something else. Are we not? I think we're talking about 2 different things.
Okay.
And
that guy's
the other one, yes, was he had made a series of films, and it was like gang life in Long Beach, I think, something like that. And an excellent film, but it's not this guy who made Neighboring Sounds. But I know what you're talking about. Yeah, he's a great filmmaker as well.
Well, these were movies made by a South American filmmaker who made a series of movies that took place in tenements in Dublin. And then
now we're talking about something else.
and then he embarked on a new series of films that also take place in a building. That's his life's work. And I'm not going to cheat and look on the internet because I know I could easily find the answer.
That's not cheating. That's doing what you got to do. In fact, I'm doing what you do. Is looking this stuff up actually. So.
Anyway, Mark. So that's another film that's playing there. Aquarius.
Yeah, Aquarius, my man.
Okay. Anything else that's of real notable?
Yeah, actually the Arthur Conan Doyle's The Lost World is going to be playing cool. Tomorrow. And what's great about that, first of all, is I saw a version of it, and I said, man, this is pretty short. I found out it was a truncated version of it. So I believe obviously the fuller version will be tomorrow with like the Alloy Orchestra or something. I don't want to say specifically which one because I don't know. Actually, Tom Pankowski is good enough to work his little blue gizmo, which seems to come up with all of these very refined answers, which we certainly appreciate. And so, yeah, Rock and Roll Aquarius. I've got another one maybe called The Rehearsal as well. And so, yeah, I didn't bring the list, but like I said, the films that I'm looking at basically are for real the subjects that I did mention. And Tom, you got an answer for us? Because you really know how to work that thing. I don't really. And my man says he does not right now. I don't need you. Do you even know what the question was?
Yep. No.
We can say we enjoyed Strad Style again, man. That is something else, man. Definitely.
So.
I'm sorry, The Lost World. So anyway, The Lost World is playing a silent film from the mid-'20s. What's great about that is, because I've read the 4 out of 5 of the Sherlock Holmes collections and read Hound of the Baskervilles 2 or 3 times. So Arthur Conan Doyle has got that great, even though it's, I think, in the Edwardian era, that Robert Louis Stevenson style, which carried over to Doyle and so forth, of that very kind of Vicwardian, let's just say, era of literature. It's kind of more like a Norrish slant on Edith Wharton and stuff like that, and Jane Austen, where obviously from the kitchen sink dramas into the foggy streets of London. So Lost World has that style as well. Tom's got an answer.
7 o'clock tomorrow night.
Yep. Well, yeah, I knew that, my man. Yes. Oh, it is the Alloy Orchestra. Thank you, Tom. That we did not know. Thank you. So that's going to be fun, and that's usually always packed with people. So what a great thing to see the Lost World like that in its fuller version for sure.
So Mark, you've read Arthur Conan Doyle and
Robert Louis Stevenson.
Robert Louis Stevenson, Jules Verne, and H.G. Wells.
Yes.
Those all sort of fall into this larger umbrella of sort of real otherworldly adventurers and of this other type of adventure and adventure literature that sort of predates the literalism of noir and intrigue coming into literature in a real sophisticated style with Joseph Conrad and Graham Greene later on. But before that, you have
Joseph Conrad is great, my man.
He's amazing. He's really the first. Conrad's the first author to bring intrigue and the world of spies, the world of mystery, into the forefront of serious literature. And before that, it had sort of been considered contrived mechanisms, and it was never really put into serious literature. It was never real art, like how Conrad looked at it as used it not only just as a means for storytelling and as a means for characterization, but really turned it into powerful metaphors for larger human and existential problems. I cannot put enough emphasis on how much I love Conrad's work and how much later sort of his predecessor, Graham Greene, who was a much more liberal writer and wrote about much more vague and much more powerfully specific human themes, but also wrote about intrigue. But before that, you have, in the Victorian era, you sort of have this influx of mysticism where suddenly people are so immersed in the world of science and in the world of concrete ideas, where you have the biggest influx in history of people being interested in the unknowable, about the ethereal, the idea of psychic phenomena, of the spirits of the dead, of the unknown, because there starts to become more research into the finite and into the infinite.
Yeah,
so
my man's talking about the Crowley, Conan Doyle era of interest in mysticism and spiritualism. But that may be the unknown, but I do know the known, Gabe, and the known is that we gotta say goodbye, man. There's just no doubt about it. So, Gabe, I just gotta say thank you so much.
Absolutely, Mark. Well, it's been good chatting with you.
Yep.
Man, you're right. It is time to go.
So we'll see you next week, Gabe.
Next week, more documentaries about filmmakers. I watched 4 of them this week. We'll chat next week, Mark. Mark, really good to see you. Really good to I didn't see you, but really good to talk with you as always. And look.
Yep. You have it. So you have a very, very, very good night, my man.
All right. Good night, Mark.
Good night, Gabe. Okay, so we got half a minute. I just want to say what Gabe was talking about. Yeah, a couple other films I want to be checking out is Columbus and Manifesto. So those are definitely on the docket, using the architecture in that basically a two-hander in between two people in the architecturally rich realm of the town of Columbus. But I don't think it's the big town. We will be on at the same time next week on WXR WLP 104.1 FM Milwaukee. To hear past episodes, visit riverwestradio.com/shows and click Cinema Fireside.